So the first thing that happens is the initial phone call. All right. And I have all these notes. I could send them all the notes to everybody. But in the initial phone call, very similar to how, Scott is going to tell you that you want to do a little bit of fact finding. And we did that the other day when Kristen Otto and I were role playing while we were doing the flex training. So the first few questions you want to ask is, who is buying the home? Steve, why would that be an important question?
A lot of times, and I found this, that the one of the spouses will call me, but they're not the ones actually buying the house, or a mother will call me for their children, say, well, we'd like to look at some houses and so on and so forth. And then you have to really determine, and I found this out the hard way, you actually have to determine who the actual buyer is going to be. Because you sit there and you work with mom for like a month, and then she goes, oh, well, my son's the one who's actually going to be buying it. Like, oh, okay, darn, let me start over again.
Right. And that's sales 101. You always want to get to the decision maker, right? Back when I first started in sales, insurance companies and then Aflac, I would have great rapport with random people. Awesome. But if they weren't the decision maker, no matter how much they liked me, they couldn't push the deal forward. So you always ask in the beginning, who wants to buy the home? The next question that I ask is, what is your timeline? Let's go, Noella. Why would that be an important question?
Could it be because you don't want to interfere the people that's currently living in the house to move in while they're still living in there?
I mean, if there's current renters in there to have a
Yeah.
long-term lease, that's a great answer. Great answer. Tom, what would your answer be?
Mine would be the homes on the market don't last very long on the market because they're sold. So if they wanted to buy a house like 2 months from now, that inventory that's out there today is already gone. So it would make no sense to even start. You could send them some things to, keep their interest. You could send them copies of listings, but I wouldn't go on any appointments because they're not ready to buy.
Absolutely. We want to know that, if they find the house they want, are they ready, willing, and able to buy the house today? Are they ready to move forward today? They could be in a long-term lease. They could be in a 12-month lease that's only 2 months in, right? I mean, you could show them houses, but you have to literally wait 10 months. And it's also good for you because you all have to budget, correct? I mean, we're all 1099, so we want to know what's in the hopper, what's an immediate lead, what's a long-term lead. And the more you start doing that and have a good CRM, what's going to come down the pike. I had a client, we just closed on her second house. The first time I met her was 3 years before she bought a house. So 3 years prior to her buying her first house, we talked. She said she wanted to do it. She had to work on a few things with her credit. She had to figure out a few things with her job, ended up getting a promotion, and she bought a house 3 years later. And who kept in touch with her the whole time? I did. Who did she reach out to? Myself. She just moved to Georgia and sold that same house. So, in real estate, nothing is, and I don't want to say nothing, but very rarely is there going to be that quick, hey, I want to buy a house tomorrow. I'm ready to rock. We go look at this house today, right? Everything is long-term. There's a huge lag in our business, and buyers are no different. You have to think the average sales cycle in real estate is what, 2 to 3 months, depending on, who it is, maybe a month and a half if it's conventional. So even if you met somebody today that's pre-qualified and went under contract today, you're not going to see the fruits of your labor until 45, 60, sometimes 90 days. Another question I ask is, where do you want to live and what school district? That's pretty self-explanatory, right? I want to kind of get an idea of the areas, the locations. For instance, if Noella called me on the phone and said, hey, I want to buy a house in Corinth. Well, now I have to take into consideration for myself how far away that Corinth drive is from Schenectady or Niskayuna, or if it would be better off if I referred it out to another agent. All those things play into consideration. When I was selling, I remember one of my days, I sold a house in Schoharie and in Glens Falls the same day. I would travel and drive everywhere. If you want to do the same, by all means, or If you want to, budget your time, feel free to refer it out. I just referred a listing out to one of the Queensberry agents because it was too far for me to go. What style of home you're looking for? This will help indicate, again, how much they know about properties. If you say what style and they're like, I don't know, I know nothing about homes, you know that the education process is going to be a little bit more. Whether they know the difference between a bungalow and a cape and a colonial and a condo and a townhouse, or if they're just completely like, yeah, I saw this house on Zillow, I really have no idea. What is your budget? Right? Joanne White talks about that with writing the winning offer. What is your budget? What is your buying power? How are you going to purchase the home? Things like that, because I want to know if they're pre-approved. I don't know if anybody had friends like I did, but when I first started, I would ask people like, are you pre-approved? And they say, oh, I got the money. I'm good for it. And I'm like, all right, but the seller doesn't know. So you have to kind of skate around those people who don't want to show, or at least go to the bank. Because if you don't want to go to the bank or to a local lender or to a local mortgage company to get pre-approved, then there's nothing you can do in this market. And that's just another way for us to show them that. So, what is your budget? Once they tell you what their budget is, ask who their lender is. And Melina, why would that be an important question? If I know that you're on your screen's out there, so you might be on mute. Oh, there she is.
I would say it'd be an important question, so you have an idea if they're going to be able to pay for the house.
There's a huge difference. Oh, yes, Noella, I saw you raise your hand at the last second.
Is it because if you don't know the lender very well, you don't know if it can fall through like the last day of the closing or?
Correct. The pre-qualification, the pre-approval is only as good as the originator that wrote it. You are going to find that some originators are better than others. You're going to find that some lenders are better than others. I love Homestead Funding. They're one of my favorite. Phil Reese is my guy. He is my personal mortgage fella. He also, when I have to refer people, I refer 3 because that's what we're supposed to do. Phil Reese is at the top of the list all the time. I also like local credit unions. People that are local to the area. There is nothing worse, and it can happen, but in my opinion, there's nothing worse than an out-of-town lender. They're going to ask for things that are true to their state that aren't true to New York. They're going to ask for documents that sometimes we don't need, nor do we have any idea what they are.
And it really makes a big difference up here in the Adirondacks because there's so many different particulars up here that a lot of lenders have to know. So it really makes it a big difference up here.
Absolutely. And I mean, the satisfaction of knowing that the lender is literally right in Clifton Park, 5 minutes up the road, 10 minutes up the road. I can go see them and shake them down if I have to, and that's the thing. You want to have a local reputable lender the same way you want a local reputable attorney. All right. People downstate, they use what's called binders. If you have a downstate attorney and they ask for the binder, you're like, we don't have that here, bud. Here's the contract. Enjoy. Right. So everything local, that is one of the biggest things. And then preset the buyers to let them know it's a long process and you would like to meet them personally at the office. All right. If they can't commit to meeting you at the office for 45 minutes to an hour, then it's going to be very difficult to walk them through the whole entire real estate process because there's so many variables that happen. And the last thing you want to do is have one of those variables come up in real time and have it be the first time they heard about it versus you doing the meeting with them prior to and saying, hey, remember when we met at my office, I told you that X, Y, and Z could possibly happen. Well, this is what that means. And remember, I told you that this is how we're going to overcome that. This is how we're going to do that. All right. Again, it's that true sense of professionalism. It's our ultimate goal for our initial meeting is to have them sign all the New York State disclosures and then have them set up a tour to go see the properties. Once they do that, I know without a shadow of a doubt they are going to be my buyers throughout the whole entire process. They're not going to waver away from me. You just have to do a good enough job up front in order for that to happen. So that is what we do. That is what we ultimately set up. So when they come into the office, so, you know, Steve, I'm like, you call me, I ask you all these pre-qualifying questions. You and I chat on the phone and say, hey, listen, you know, Tuesday at 3 o'clock or Friday at 4 o'clock, what time works best for you? And you say Friday at 4. I said, okay, great. Steve, remember when I asked you who's buying the home? You said you and your wife. Are both of you able to be there at 4 o'clock? Because I want to make sure that I answer all of your questions and uncover your true need to buy a house. Does that time work for the both of you? And they said yes. The other thing I do is if today is hypothetically, let's say today's Monday and I'm meeting with them on Friday, and Steve says, hey, listen, I haven't been pre-approved yet. I tell Steve, hey, listen, you have homework before Friday. I need you to reach out to the lender because on Friday, we're going to start looking at houses and I need to know what your buying power is. And I need to know what price range we should look for. Do you think you can get that pre-approval or you think you can talk to the lender prior to Friday?
Absolutely.
And he says, absolutely. If all of a sudden Friday comes and I do my follow-up call, hey, Steve, it's Ryan. We're meeting today at 4 o'clock. Just want to make sure you have everything in order. We ready to rock and roll? Or if you have a local lender, they're going to send you the pre-approval anyway prior to. If Friday at 4 o'clock comes and Steve's like, yeah, I haven't met with a lender or anything like that, not a problem, Steve. Why don't we reschedule until afterwards? So after you meet with the lender, that way you know exactly what your buying power is. All right. The only commodity we can't get back in life is time. The last thing that I want to do, although I love helping people just like everybody else on this call does, I don't want to waste my time with somebody who just wants a friend for an hour talking about real estate. I want to talk to people who are ready, willing, and able to buy a house today, tomorrow, or the next day. All right. So now we're at the office. Now we're meeting. Now I'm going to show them my little presentation. I can send this to everybody if you'd like, but you know it's there. So I say, hey, Steve, you know, the importance of having a buyer agent is this. In most cases, my services are free. I get paid by the sellers. There could be a certain situation where if you're looking at a for sale by owner and they don't offer a co-broke, then you and I will discuss the commission. It would have to come out of your pocket. But 99% of the time, we're going to find a house on the MLS that's listed, or the for sale by owner, I can negotiate with them to have them pay my co-broke. A buyer agent knows what to look for when viewing houses. You know, Steve, you and your wife are going to be looking at all the aesthetics. I appreciate aesthetics. I appreciate marble and backsplash and tile and all that. But I'm really looking at the house in a different lens than you are. You know, my lens is, does it make sense financially for you and your family? My lens is, hey, although it has backsplash, it does look like the ceiling is rotted out, right? So those are the things that I'm going to be looking at versus what you're going to be looking at. I, as a buyer agent, I understand the local market and I have access to the MLS. You, I'm sure, have gone on Zillow. I'm sure you've gone on Realtor. I'm sure you've gone on Trulia and all the other third-party websites. Those are not clear indications of price. A clear indication of price is what I find on the MLS. So when you're looking at a property, we're going to make sure that if it's listed at $250,000, it's a good value. And I'll tell you right now, Steve, in this market, value is kind of pie in the sky. You know, if you love the house, you might have to pay over market value for it. It just is what it is. Are you ready to do that? And Steve will say, yeah, I understand the market. I've seen what's going on. You know, we have to get out of our apartment within, 6 months. I'm sick of paying rent. So if I have to pay a little bit more now to save money later, I'm okay with that. As a buyer agent, Steve, I can help you, evaluate and secure your financing. I know that you already talked to Homestead Funding. I know that you're pre-approved with a conventional mortgage. I'm going to go over that pre-approval with you. Some lenders do a great job discussing seller concession. Some do an awful job discussing it. I just had a pre-approval from another lender, which was not Homestead, which was awful. They thought they were pre-approved for 150,000, but really they were pre-approved for 140 something thousand, and they had 6% seller concession on there. They had no idea what that meant. So now instead of them looking at $150,000 homes, now we're looking at $130,000 to make up for the seller concession and for the increase in price of all the properties. So again, when you get that pre-approval, make sure they understand that. Make sure they understand what it means. If they need further explanation, you can help them out, or you can also call the lender on three-way to help them out. Me as a buyer agent, I'm going to help coordinate all your showings. One of the last things that you want to do, Steve, is call the listing agent directly because they work for the seller. I, as a buyer agent, I work for you. So if you see 123 Main Street and you want to take a look at that, Steve, then you and I will coordinate a scheduled showing based on, you know, when our availability is. Buyer agent, I'll know how to write the real estate contract. I'm going to show you a copy of the contract today, Steve. That way you and your wife have an idea of what you're signing. That way you know what it is, because sometimes it could be super fast. We could see a house at 8 o'clock at night, and I might send you the contract via dot loop at 9 o'clock, and you might sign it on your phone. I at least want to let you know what you're signing prior to, so you know all the pertinent parts beforehand, and then we'll uncover the rest later. I have access to experienced professionals meeting during the transaction. So Steve, I know that you said you didn't have an attorney. Don't worry, I have a handful of attorneys I work with, home inspectors I work with. And then if any issues do arise with the house, I do have a list of professionals, whether it be roofers, plumbers, electricians, things along those lines to help move the process along more smoothly. I will be your negotiator. It's one of my favorite things to do. Now, I'll tell you, Steve, in this market, negotiations are quite difficult. We might have to give a little to get a little bit later on. When we write our offer, we'll figure out what we want to do and how we want to present that to the sellers in order to give you the best opportunity to purchase the house. Does that make sense, Steve? Perfect. I will keep the transaction on schedule. Everything that we do is a timeline. So from the day that you sign the contract to the day the attorney approves it, to the day that we have the inspection set, to the day that we have the appraisal set, to the day that we have the title set up, all the way through to the final day of closing, I will be holding your hand with the whole process. Now, a lot of these dates are written on the contract, but they can fluctuate. You know, the attorneys might ask for an extension on something. Although your contract says that the closing could be, you know, March 15th, it's a target due date. You know, it's going to be on or around the 15th. You could close the 20th, could close the 21st, or if you're clear to close, you could close the 14th. So we'll know more about that date later on as we get closer to it. And then lastly, I'm going to be your emotional filter. You know, this is the first time you've gone through the process with your wife. You're going to get emails from the lender, from the processor. You're going to get letters from this that you need X, Y, and Z. You're going to be pissed off because you already sent in your pay stubs and they're going to ask for it again. It is what it is. It happens often. Just if you need to talk, if you need to vent, I will be your emotional filter. Just call me your psychologist that, you know, gets paid a little bit less than your average psychologist. All right, Steve? And that is what I do in the beginning to preset the expectations of kind of how the process goes and how working with the buyer agent, it helps represent them. A lot of times people often think, I'm just going to go directly to the seller's agent because they know the price and they can negotiate better on behalf. 100% BS. All right. The seller agent works for the seller. And I make that abundantly clear during this because when I first started, before I would do the initial buyer consultation, I had somebody call me up, wanted to buy a house, looked around, bunch of houses, didn't have them sign any paperwork, didn't do anything. I was all willy-nilly, didn't know any better. And then 2 months later, I called them back up, say, hey, you haven't called me back. Where have you been? Like, oh, I called the listing agent on a property. I'm already under contract. Thank you. Thanks. I wasted 2 months of my life. And I don't know about you, but as soon as I get a new buyer or a listing client, I'm already kind of cashing that commission check in my head. And yeah, that was an awful way to not cash any money and lose money on gas and mileage and everything. All right. So the 10 steps to buying a home. Now, Steve, this is the first time you and your wife are buying a home, correct?
Yes.
Perfect. And are you familiar with the buying process?
Little, not really.
Okay. So step number one, find a realtor that you trust and have your best interest in mind. You know, Steve, I hate to be blunt, but I think you made a right choice by coming into this office. We'll tell at the end of the conversation if we're a good fit for one another, okay?
Okay.
Step number two, get pre-approved. Looks like you already have your pre-approval from Homestead Funding, so great job on that. Congratulations. That gives us the piece of paper we need in order for us to look at as many homes as it takes. Step three, set up an initial meeting with your realtor. That's where we are right now, right? We're having our initial conversation. We're going to look at the MLS and we're going to search for active homes and we're going to view as many homes as it takes. Steve, you might fall in love with the first home. You might fall in love with the 15th home. I don't know. You know, the misconception is that you have to look at X number of homes before you buy one. You know, Steve, can I be honest with you? I'm sure the first time you looked at your wife, you knew she was the one right then and there. So you didn't have to look
Absolutely.
anywhere else. Or
Absolutely.
she looked at you and she knew you were the one. Either way. Right. I like to break the ice a little bit, have a few, you know, jokes, laughing, enjoy the company of the people I'm with, and make it real for them. You know, especially with my friends, you know, when I first started in my early 30s, you know, mom and dad would go to every showing and they could fall in love with a house that checked off every box. But dad is in the background. You know what, son? This is only the second house you've seen. National statistics say that you should look at 27 houses before you make your purchase. So I always let them know it could be the first one, it could be the 15th. Whatever the case is, once you walk into that home and you get that warm, fuzzy feeling, that's the house you want to put the offer in. I can't control that. Only you as the buyers can. You might love a raised ranch. I might hate them. My job is never to sell you a home. My job is to facilitate a sale of the home that you want. All right. Does that make sense?
Mhm.
All right.
It does.
Make the sellers an offer. And then we usually have to have an earnest money deposit, usually 1%. All right. Now, in this market, the higher the earnest money deposit, the more we differentiate our number. So let's say we're looking at a $250,000 home, Steve. Your initial deposit is going to be about $2,500. Just want to make sure you're aware of that because that is going to be an upfront cost prior to everything. So I want
Do
you
you
and
try
your
to do 10% each time, roughly?
well, 1%, 10%.
1%, yeah. I meant 1%.
do. I mean, if it's, you know, if it's a $280,000 home, I'm going to say, okay, let's do $3,000, right? Or if I know it's competitive, then, hey, listen, I know that you're putting 10% down. Why don't we do a $5,000 earnest money deposit to differentiate our number? Because if you have $5,000 kind of in the system, that gives them more skin and you more skin in the game versus somebody who's going to put $1,000 deposit in who, you know, $1,000 is $1,000, but it's easier to walk away from $1,000 than it is 5,000. You know, I think our earnest money deposits around here are quite low. Even when I'm representing sellers, I always try to get as much EMD as I possibly can because, you know, it's hard to walk away from little nitpicky things when you have $5,000 to $10,000 in escrow. It's super easy when you have 1,000 in escrow. So, Steve, that's going to be one of your upfront costs. It's going to be one of your upfront things that's going to come out of pocket. Once the contract is signed by all parties, it gets sent to the attorneys for a 3-day attorney approval period. Now, you have to think of it like this, Steve. When you initially sign the contract and it is countersigned by the sellers, that is a signed agreement per se. It is not a contract until the attorneys approve it. Within that 3-day period, and I've had this happen only a few times, the sellers can back out of the contract for any reason they want. It is not illegal. You can't sue them. It's well within their right within the attorney approval period to back out. 9 times out of 10, they got a higher offer. All right. We can then renegotiate or we can completely close that house off and start the process again. In this market, Steve, it happens more often than I'd like. But I just want to make sure you're aware of that just in case the off chance it does happen.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Once we're done with attorney approval, we're going to schedule our inspections. A licensed home inspector is the one that has to facilitate it. I know your Uncle Bob, his cousin's brother, Mike, did a roof once when he was in 8th grade. He is not a contractor. He can't do the home inspection. The home inspection has to be licensed through New York State, and they're going to have the report. Within that home inspection, there's going to be a few things we're going to look at. We're going to look at the honey-do list stuff, which is just regular maintenance of your home, right? They're going to look at little minor things like, hey, you have to attach your gutter, or, the faucet has a tiny little leak that you just have to change the screen on. And then there's going to be major issues, right? The electrical, the boiler, mold, radon, things along those lines. Anything $1,500 or more is going to be considered a major issue. Now, if you have 15 items that are $100 each, it's not cumulative. All right. So when we do our home inspection, we're going to look for the major material. Every house is going to have its quirks. Every house is going to have its ups and downs. Every house is going to have its honey-do list. It's going to be deferred maintenance. It is what it is. All right. So I just want to make sure you're aware of that. And that typically is an out-of-pocket expense. And Steve, it could be anywhere from $500 to $1,200, depending on the home. And the reason why there's such a big range, if you have a house with a well, that's a separate inspection. If you have a house with a septic, that's a separate inspection. You're going to want to do your structural inspection, which right now is anywhere from $500 to $600, I'd say. But when we get to that point, I'm going to give you a list of home inspectors. You call the one you like. Whatever one is the most knowledgeable is the one that I want you to go with. As much as I want you to save money, there's a time and a place to save money. And on your home inspection on a $250,000 home, saving $50 or $100 is probably not the time to do that. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. Do you have one that you can recommend?
Yeah, absolutely. I'll give you a whole list of them. Okay. Is that a real question, or is that a question?
That was a question. Well, can you just give me a guide? Can you could just set one up for me?
Yeah, I can set one up for you. Absolutely.
Okay.
It's not a big deal. I prefer if you call them, because I want it ultimately to be your decision. Everybody has their good days. Everybody has their bad days. Stephen Curry, one of the greatest 3-point shooters in the NBA, could have an off day where he misses every shot. If you see him at that game and it's the only time you saw him, you might think he's terrible. So I at least want you to make the decision in case the home inspector had an off day. Does that make sense?
It does. Thank you.
All right. So depending on the results of the home inspection, we're going to get that report back, and then we can negotiate a few things. All right. Major defects, major issues, we can negotiate it where either the seller takes care of that, the seller gives us a credit, or if the seller says absolutely not, we have 37 other offers, you buy the house as is, and it is what it is. All right. We'll negotiate all that as it comes up in real time, but those are the things that could happen. Typically, the seller will give some sort of credit because they want to keep the deal moving along. And, if they have to put it back in the market, then they have to disclose the issues. And then it's another month or 2 months of mortgage payments. So it's always good to keep the train moving, because they want to sell the house, you want to buy the house. And then there's that gray area of negotiations in the middle where everybody thinks that they don't want to give in because they don't want to lose the negotiation, right? What we want to do is we want to make sure that you buy the home and it's in good condition. Once we're done with inspections, and I always kind of go over the inspection part, but when I'm meeting with them face to face, if they do have additional questions, because that is one of the biggest contingencies, is the inspection, right? That's why I prefer them to call the inspector to ask questions. If they have questions on the legal side of things, ask the attorney prior to. That way they know exactly what's going on in real time. Our job and I hate the term real estate salesperson, right? It just car salesperson, insurance salesperson. I prefer the term, although it's not accredited by New York State, I prefer real estate consultant, right? I am here to consult you on your real estate, which is the biggest investment of your life. I might not know all the answers, but I know the people that will. All right. So consult with your attorney, consult with your home inspector, consult with your lender, consult with me. Once we're done with the inspection process, then we do the appraisal. Again, this is going to be an out-of-pocket expense. It does get credited back, and it's less in closing costs you to bring, but you pay it up front, and that's anywhere from $300 to $500. The lender is going to send the appraiser out. I will tell you right now that process is a little bit longer than normal. I would say the average turnaround time is 2 to 4 weeks for the appraisal, all depending on when they can get out there. More rural areas, it might be a little bit longer. I would say areas that are more highly densely populated, let's say Colony, or, for you, probably Queensbury, would be, a quicker turnaround time. All the while this is going on, in the background, the attorney is ordering title. And it depends on what county you're in as to who's going to order the title, whether it's the purchaser's attorney or the seller's attorney. In Schenectady, it is the seller's attorney. Now, title just means that you have a clean piece of paper that says that you can own the house without any liens, encumbrances, anything like that. It means that Joe Smith can sell the house to you free and clear, no title issues. If there are title issues, let's say back taxes, that is something that the seller would have to take care of out of the proceeds of the loan, or have a satisfaction from another lender. I'd say the biggest things that show up on title is if Bank A sold the property to Bank B and Bank A is no longer in business, trying to find that satisfactory letter, it happens. I just recently had a transaction where it was fortunate where Trustco Bank had a different name back in the 80s. So title got held up for a few days, but I called Trustco. They went to their archives and we were able to get that satisfaction letter. I've also had an issue where we were under contract, ready to close, and nobody could find this defunct bank anywhere. So now the house couldn't close because we couldn't get clean title. All right. Title always happens towards the end. It is an expense of the attorneys. That's why they want to make sure the other contingencies are satisfied prior to. All right. Barring there's no title issues, no problems with that. Then we go on to the next step, which is clear to close. Your lender could be clear to close, right? So you could satisfy all of your mortgage contingencies, but you could still have stuff on title. So those two kind of happen, in a timely fashion. Just know that if your lender says, hey, Steve, you're clear to close, it doesn't mean you really can close tomorrow. It just means that the lender satisfied it, but we could still be waiting on title things. Once you get that, they're going to ask you, or even, a few days prior to, they're going to ask you for your homeowner's insurance. The bank, the lender, is going to want to make sure that you have homeowner's insurance on your property prior to you closing. Just like your taxes, you're going to pay them up front. Just like your home insurance, you're going to pay that up front as well. Talk to your local auto insurance company, see if they can bundle your package and save yourself some money. Prices could vary based on houses. It could be $700, it could be $1,200. Your insurance company is going to be the one that's going to tell you. Your lender will tell you how much you want it for, who to have on the title policy and everything, or on the insurance policy and everything. So just keep in mind that that is going to be another upfront cost. Then we're going to do our final walkthrough. Final walkthrough, we just want to make sure that there's no furniture in the house, no spoiled paint cans in the house, no garbage, no debris. What I do is I make sure I turn the oven on, I turn the microwave on, I open the refrigerator. I'm going to run the faucets for a few minutes. I'm going to flush the toilets, because as soon as we leave that walkthrough and you sign that dotted line at the closing, that house is yours. Now, Steve, I don't want to scare you or anything, but if the house blows up 30 seconds after you buy it,
It's yours.
that's yours. Now obviously there are situations if the seller was hiding major defects behind walls and they knew about it, then we can go down there. But at the end of the day, once you sign that property, sign that closing bill and everything like that, the property is yours. So, I always prefer to do like a half-hour final walkthrough. It's not an inspection. It's just, we already went through the inspection. The same way we saw the house at the inspection, it's the same way we want to see the house here. And the things we could check is, the plumbing, the electrical, turn it on, plug a few things in, turn some lights on, make sure everything works, and we're ready to rock. So that is the simplified version of what you're going to go through. If you tally it up, you can look at your out-of-pocket expenses, things like that. That's just money you're going to want to have in the bank in addition to the closing costs that your lender is going to save for a down payment. All right, Steve, does that all make sense?
It does. Thank you.
Perfect. All right. Now this is a sample MLS sheet. Yep.
Are we going to get a copy of these?
Yeah,
can we
I'll
use
send
them
everybody
here?
a copy. Yeah, I have this all as a PDF. So
Mhm.
I'll send you this whole entire thing. All right. And then
And we can use parts and pieces of this?
you can use whatever you want. I mean, I would prefer if you used my face and name from page 1, you know, just use that every time, you know, or superimpose your face over mine and call it a day.
No, I'm just talking about some of the parts of this could be great for social media type stuff, as far as, you know, the 10 steps and so on and so forth. So,
And you can clean this up. You know, you could make this with nice infographics. You could put stuff in the background, whatever you want to do. Anything that I share, you all have free reign to take it. Remember what I said day 1, right? Real estate is ripping and duplicating, repeat, rinse, and making it better. So you could have something in there that's pertinent to you and your COI. I'll have something in there that's pertinent to mine. All right.
thank you.
Good to know.
Yeah, you're very, very welcome. So this is a sample MLS sheet. Now this is the old Paragon MLS. This is just for you know, illustration purposes. You know, obviously this is going to be changed over to the Flex and all that stuff. But what I do is, now when I'm sitting down with my clients, right, I have this either printed out or I have it, you know, mirrored on my TV. So they're looking at this with me. We're all looking at everything together, whether it's a tablet that I'm looking at upside down, or my computer that I have turned over, or the computer that's mirrored to the TV. Some way or another, everybody is looking at the same exact thing. All right. So what I do is I show the people this, and this is a snapshot into what I look at as a real estate professional. Now, Steve, part of my job is to make sure that you are so incredibly educated with the process that you know what you're looking for prior to. You know how to read the MLS sheet, you know how to look at certain things, you know what days on market means. I want to make sure that you and your wife make the best educated decision possible, because you're going to be in this house for probably 30 years. And within that 30 years, I'm hoping that I do such a great job for you, Steve, that you sing my praises to every one of your neighbors. All right. Because you want to have your neighbors be your friends over time, and you want to kick the current neighbors out. All right. So what we're going to look at is we're going to look at up here. And this is one of my old listings from back in the day, and that's why I picked it. All right. So up here, I'm sure you can barely see it, but it says 164.9. All right. That is the current, that was the original price. Now, as we're looking through, and we're going to show it and flex it a little bit, if my computer doesn't crash again, it's always important for people to see the original price and then the current price, because that is an indication, that's a quick snapshot into the seller's mindset. They were originally at 164.9. They are now down to 154.9. They did a $10,000 price jump or price drop. You know, that's big. That means that they kind of have an idea that the house is either A, overpriced, or B, they want to dump it, and they want to dump it quick. If you're doing price drops in $500 increments, it doesn't really make much sense. You know, you're just doing little, and all the while your days on market goes up, while your price goes down. That's a recipe for disaster when you're doing things. So as a sidebar, if you are meeting with clients and you tell them that, hey, you know, your house, I think, is listed high, have a plan of attack for price drops. You know, we just listed the house on Scotch Ridge, and I said, you know, if it doesn't sell at this, we have to do an aggressive price drop. And she's like, what, maybe $500, $1,000? Like, no, like $5,000 to $10,000, right? And that's just food for thought moving forward. So there's that. The other thing, it's kind of like the litmus test, right? It's the basis point. It's your price per square foot. And what we want to do is we want to make sure that you're buying a house within the average price per square foot. You know, if the average price per square foot is 128 and the house you're looking at is 157, well, that better have gold inlays, marble, bidets. It better have all the bells and whistles that you could ever imagine if you're paying $30 more per square foot for that property. Right here is the average, is the above ground square footage, and that's what we want to look at. That's what we're going to compare apples to apples. Over here, it's going to be the cooling type, the heat type, right? Things like electric baseboard heat. That's going to be a huge energy burden to you. You're going to maybe save money on the house, but you're going to pay 10 times as much to National Grid, especially in today's day and age. So just keep in mind that if we do see electric baseboard, that might not be the choice for you. But again, we'll cover that. You did say that you wanted central air. This house does not offer central air. It only has a wall AC unit. So when we're doing our search, we'll be able to refine it and make it as important as possible to you. All right. Then down here, days on market. All right. Days on market is so incredibly important because you have to think the longer something has been sitting there, the more likely the seller is to drop the price. Now, Steve, I'm going to ask you a question and you can answer however you see fit. If a house is listed at $200,000 with 1 day on the market and 15 offers, do you think they would take a lowball offer?
Absolutely not.
And I say that just because I've had clients in the past who've said, well, you know, Ryan, if they want to sell, they'll entertain my offer.
Yeah.
The time and a place for that, if we were to look at this house with no offers, 150 days in the market, something like that, absolutely. Let's go. You know, and you know, you have to imagine that you're financing this property over 360 payments, which is 30 years. So the difference of a few $1,000 here and there is a difference of a few dollars per month. Sometimes it might be worth it to swallow your pride, pay over asking price if that's the house that you love, just to pay a few dollars more per month. Does that make sense, Steve?
Absolutely.
So what I'm doing right now is I'm presetting the expectations for the sellers, or for the buyers rather, that it is a competitive market. Yes, you might have to go over asking price, because had I not done this consultation and Steve and I look at a house for the first time and we're now meeting for the first time, right? And all of a sudden I'm telling Steve, oh yeah, the house is at 200, but you have to put an offer in for 215. He's like, dude, why are you trying to steal my money? I don't trust you. But now when I have that conversation, I can say, hey, Steve, remember when we were at my office? And I said, because it's 1 day in the market with 15 offers, we have to be aggressive. This is the house that you want. Let's go aggressive. All right. And it just makes it a lot easier for them to swallow that. Tom, you had a question?
Yeah. I was taught by Joe Sullivan that if you're like, say, $3,000 or $4,000, you know, you need to move up to get this property, reduce the increase to the ridiculous. So like, you know, if they're drinking Starbucks coffee, I'll say, you know, you're only talking about four cups of coffee a month. So, you know, that's what Joe taught us years ago, that, you know, it's a very small amount. It might be like $5 per thousand. So yep. Reduce it to the ridiculous. You could even, you don't want to get into like the pennies per day, like ASPCA, whatever that, you know, or the, yeah. Because they talk about 63 cents a day, you know, kind of thing.
Yeah, no, and that makes sense because it makes it more real time. You know, you can say, you know,
but if you see they're drinking a Starbucks coffee while you're talking about this, I'll say, you spent $5 on that coffee. 3 of those is what we're only apart by, you know, 3 of those coffees a month.
Exactly. Or, you know, eating out, you know,
yeah.
and I always tell my clients too, you know, there's a difference between buying the house of your dreams. And then there's also, you know, a difference of being house broke. You know, the last thing that you want to do, and again, part of my consultative approach is, you know, you still want to live your life. You still want to go on vacation. You still want to go out to dinner. The last thing you want to do is have $1,500 in mortgage payments and you make $1,600 a month, right? Obviously, the bank will never approve you for that, but you get my point. You still want to live your life. You don't want to be burdened by a home, because then at that point, the home you will never love again.
Yeah.
All right. So we do all that. I show them this stuff. All right. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to change my screen. I'm going to go into the MLS now, and then I'm going to talk about how I get them to sign the agency agreement. I'm going to show them the docs that they're going to need, right? I'm going to show them a copy of the contract, which we're not going to spend a ton of time on because you guys already went through it. But at least you're going to see what I show the folks. So stop screen share. Screen share. Let's do this. Okay. So everybody can see good old Flexaroo. All right. So now that I went through all of my basics, all of my background, everything that, the process is going to say, all right, Tom or Steve, I asked you and your wife what your wish list was. And, for argument's sake, Steve, I'm going to make this as vague as possible to get as many searches as possible. You're going to say that, you're pre-approved up to 350, and you're going to say, well, I don't want to spend, full 350. Let's go, 250 to 325, whatever. That way it gives you some skin in case you have to increase your offer by 15,000 or by 20,000, right? That way, exactly, especially in this market, that's important. And let's say you want to be in South Colony schools. All right. Well, there's only 3 houses. Let's say we're going to go North Colony as well. And let's say we're going to pick Shelma as well. They're all over the board. They don't care where they go. And we currently have 11 homes.
I did actually go to Colony Central, by the way.
Well, so I knew that. I felt that. I felt the energy of Colony Central. So when we're talking to them, and again, I always show them, and now this is real time, me showing them everything. Currently there are 11 homes for sale between $250,000 and $325,000. There is a number of buyers that are looking at the same homes that you are. All right. The more search criteria we put in there, the less of a search we're going to have, and the more tight it's going to be. What are your must-have, Steve? Like, you can't buy a house without it. Other things, central air. If there's ductwork, you can get a condenser unit, right? We can maybe do that afterwards. So I'm saying, what are your absolute must-haves? And you tell me, I need at least 3 bedrooms. All right, and that's what we're
3 bedrooms and definitely 2 bathrooms. I'm a guy. I need my own bathroom.
All right, so 3 bedrooms and at least 2 bathrooms. Let's see what happens, Steve. There's 8 homes. So let's take a look at these 8 homes that are listed within that area. All right, and we're just going to go to list. Perfect. You're up top now. I might have to move you all later. All right. And what I always do is I go here and I start ascending. All right. And I like to go up, and I'm going to say, okay, Steve, remember that first page that I showed you of the MLS? What me, you, and your wife are going to do is we're going to look at these houses. Now, keep in mind, Steve, I have no bearing on any of these houses. I don't care. You could say, hey, they're awful. In fact, while we're looking at these, I am going to rip them apart as well, because I don't, I care more about you buying a house, and I'm going to point out all the imperfections. All right, so let's start with Main Street. All right, so we're going to go to Main Street, and we're going to look. Steve, how many square feet is this house? And you're going to say it's 1548. All right. And I could probably see it better than you can, because I'm sure it's a screen share, so it might be a little blurry or smaller on your screen. All right. Now what we're going to do, Steve, is we're going to look here and we're going to say, okay, the kitchen's on the first floor, has a first floor office, which is nice. And we're going to look at all that stuff. Then we're going to go to photos. Take a look here as it loads up. And Steve, do you like these photos? Is this house that you kind of want to see, or I don't know? I mean, the yard,
not particularly,
right? Yeah.
No, I'm good.
Something about the yard. I mean, it does look like they did new floors and they painted it, but
The house looks nice. It's just like the location right on Main Street. I'm not really
Okay.
interested.
Yeah, let's get rid of that one. Let's go to the next one. All right. And Market Street. And you could say, you know, Steve, Ryan, I don't like that one. Okay, fine. So all we're doing is we're now looking at every single MLS listing, and I am asking Steve and his wife certain questions to make sure that they're engaged. You know, hey Steve, how long has this house been on the market? And days on market is somewhere on this right there.
58.
58. So Steve, what does that tell you? It's 58 days in the market and currently listed at 264.9.
It might be a little overpriced if it's been on the market that long in this kind of
Yeah.
a market. So
And you know what? They did have it originally priced at 275, so they did do an $11,000 price drop.
yeah, but that was back in December. It looks like.
Yeah. So that was a few months ago. So they haven't done anything since. So, you know, let's go on to the next one. Let's go here to report.
Actually, with all that history, it looks like there might have been an actual problem with the house, not just the price.
Probably, yeah. See, I'm teaching you well right from the beginning. You are you a real estate agent? Because you seem like you know what you're doing.
But you've shown me, you've taught me very well.
Ah, see, that's the answer that I like.
Hey Ryan, quick question for you.
Yeah.
When you just, that last couple screens you were just back there, does that tell you everybody who has actually showed that house?
No, it just shows the history of the house. We can go in here and we can expand it. So
I was just wondering, were those people that actually went in and viewed, do you see how many people actually went in and showed the house?
no, you don't. I mean, the only time you really can do it is if you're trying to schedule an appointment and you see how many times it's blocked off. Then you can get like an indication, but that's just real time. You can't really go back in the past to say, oh, well, this house has been viewed 37 times and no offers.
Okay, yeah, that's what I was wondering. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, real time. That would be great info to have, but unfortunately,
Yeah.
I don't have that.
Well, it just seemed like when my son was going around looking for houses, they were like, oh, there's 10 showings today, there's 15 tomorrow. So that was actually in showings where they were seeing that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. They were definitely seeing that in real time.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Great question. So, you know, Steve, what do you think of this house, Giffords Church Road? And we're gonna say, for all intents and purposes, that Steve loves this house. All right,
Looks
you
nice.
like this house? Looks good. All right, cool.
Looks
What
good.
I'm gonna do is I'm gonna set up what's called a showing cart, and what we're gonna do is we're gonna put all the houses that we like into our showing cart. All right, so this is gonna load up. We're gonna add the showing cart. Now Rob does a little different. He does single showing. I'll show you why I like showing cart in a second. And you know, Steve, what day are you and your wife available?
Oh, let's go with Saturday, really. It'd be the easiest. She works Monday through Friday.
Oh, perfect. And are you guys more available in the morning or the afternoon?
Morning would be better.
Perfect. Me too. Me too. And now, Steve, I do have my 11-year-old son with me who's been involved in real estate for about 8 years. Would it be okay if he accompanied? Because I'll tell you what, there's no person more honest than an 11-year-old in this day and age.
Fair enough. If you don't mind me bringing my dog with me.
Perfect. Let's go. The only thing is, I'm sure the dog won't be allowed in the house, but
No, that's fine. He'll
All
stay,
right,
he'll
good.
stay in the vehicle.
all right. I actually did have somebody try to bring their dog into a showing. I'm like, yeah, buddy, that's
No.
not gonna fly.
Absolutely not.
I'm just gonna call it test for argument's sake. And what it does is it puts the house there. Now, Steve, this house is a go and show, which means that we can really see it anytime. All right, let's go back to the MLS and we're gonna look at the next one. We're gonna look at Mordella. And you'll say, wow, Ryan, I really like that house too.
And that's a nice
Okay.
neighborhood too.
Great neighborhood. And we're gonna go here and we're gonna go add a showing cart and look at where their test is. And we're gonna go next. And that's a go and show as well. All right, but showings are not allowed on Saturday because, well, for whatever reason, they don't allow showings on Saturdays. So we'll remove that one. All right, and let's say you like this one. All right, this is the house that you really like. You're like, wow, that's the best house. All right, boom, 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 and you're gonna look, and you're gonna look. Okay. Just for argument's sake, do you guys see that?
Mhm.
So this selling agent is offering 2% on the buyer co-broke versus the typical 2.5%. But you know, it is what it is. Don't have that discourage you. If your clients love the house, then still show the house, obviously. Let's go here.
How would you go about getting that other 0.5%? Either talking to the other broker
I
or the
mean,
buyer?
you could charge your buyer for that, right? And that's why, again, when we do our initial consultation, I say that 99% of the time our commissions are paid for by the listing agent.
Mhm.
You would bring that up and say, hey, listen, this agent's only offering 2%. You know, the other 0.5% would come out of your pocket, or, you know, talk to your manager and you know, you can, there's different ways of going around it, right? You could say, hey, Steve, listen, I just want to let you know that I'm doing this at a 0.5% less. I'm not going to charge you because I like you. I know that your budget is tight. What I would recommend and what I would suggest and what would really help me as I grow my business would be if you could refer people to me. And I'm going to call you weekly. I'm going to say, who do you know that's looking to buy, sell, rent, or invest? Think you can do that for me? I'll take care of you if you take care of me.
Absolutely.
Perfect. And then that way it's at least out there. It's upfront. It's open. You know, other agents might say, no, I'm absolutely getting that 0.5% from my clients. I have never done it, nor will I, but that's just me. You are free to run your business as you see fit, and just make sure you chat with your manager prior to, so they know what's going on.
I did it with a FSBO. My buyer paid my commission on a FSBO.
Well, and that's the thing on a FSBO, if it's the full 2.5, absolutely.
Yeah.
If you're talking about a 0.5% on something that's already listed, you know, pick your battles, I guess is the best way to say.
Absolutely.
So let's say we like this. What was
Sorry.
that?
I have a question on that too. So if you are a buyer's agent and they find a FSBO that they like, do they still have to pay you? Or can they just go buy that on their own?
I mean, they can buy it on their own, but you know, again, when I talk to them in the beginning of the consultation, I'm like, you know, you're going to want to have representation because this is all the things that I can do for you.
Okay.
Right? If you buy a house on your own, I mean, it's the biggest investment of your life, and yeah, you might save 2.5%, but you're going to also pay $20,000 more than you should on the actual price of the home, or you might have issues with the inspection, or you might have issues with title or the attorney. You know, so there could be so many underlining things that could happen. So for you to pay me a small portion, which is 2.5%, to save thousands of dollars later, it's well within, you know, what I think you should do.
Okay.
All right. And I always talk to people when I first meet with them and say, you know, you could see a for sale by owner, you know, but again, if we're doing that, I'm going to walk you through the whole entire process. This is my value that I bring to the table, you know, and once you show them your value, it is going to be very hard for them to look the other way and get a for sale by owner without at least compensating you for your time and your energy and your knowledge. All right, so we just looked at the other house. Boom, we're going to add that to the showing cart. We're going to go next. Boom, and there it is. All right, and we're going to go back into here, and we're going to look at Mariahville Road. All right, and we're going to say, is that a bunker?
That's what it looks like.
Oh, let's look at the pictures because I'm intrigued right now. Hang on. Wow. What's going on here?
It's a foundation.
Yeah, but for 300 and okay. Well, I mean, hey, whatever. It is what it is.
I think I'll pass on that one, Ryan. Sorry.
Well, just for argument's sake, we're gonna just put it into showing time just so I can show you guys something.
Fair enough.
They're not accepting online appointments. All right. So we're gonna go back up to the first one, which is Fran's, and I'm 99% sure that she is gonna have everything perfect because she is. If you want to mimic an agent and how they put their listings in and how you do things professionally, take a look at any one of Fran Callahan's listings, and you're going to learn so much from her. She is a constant professional with everything she does in real estate. All right. So we're going to say that these are the houses that you want to see. All right. And again, this one, they don't allow showings on that date. So what I like to do is when I go here, I'm going to click Smart Route. All right. Or turn by turn directions, right? Smart Route, all that fun stuff. Okay. So we're going to pick our time and we're going to say 10:15 to 11:30. And we're going to say we're buyer agent. All right. And then this one. And now if you look here, see this 28 minutes? It means that this house to this house is 28 minutes away. When you're doing 6 or 7 showings, it is super important to know how far away they are. Let me just go back here to edit search. We're going to add another school district here. We're going to add Mahoneson. And we're going to get rid of South Colony. We're just going to, I want to show you guys something in a second. All right. Then we're going to go to list. And we're going to do the same thing. We're going to add to the showing cart. Okay, they're not accepting online showings. We're really striking out with this. All right, we're going to go to showing time. Make sure when you put listings in that you set them up on showing time, because there's nothing more discouraging than what we're dealing with right now, where you can't see a house. And imagine if this was a real situation. And imagine if you were selling a house for your client and you forgot to set it up in showing time, and now you're missing a few showings. It's not professional, and it's not the way you should be doing things. All right, I want to get at least 5. So we're going to go back here. We're going to go to edit search, and we're going to pick one more location just for fun. And we're going to pick Gilderland. And there's one house listed in Gilderland for between that price point. List. Showing time. Somebody driving fast? Okay, perfect. So now if you look, see how it has these all over the place, and look at the map. 1, 2, 3, 4. Can you see that, Steve?
Yes.
That makes absolutely no sense in the history of the world to go from this area to this area to this area to this area. So what we do is we just press, and I found this out a few years ago, and it's been my best friend ever since. And I click Smart Route, and now it calculates it. So now I go from 1, 2, 3 to 4, and it brings you to all the highways, so it knows exactly where you're going. So number 1 is Giffords Church Road. And now this is set to my home address. It knows that I live in Rotterdam. At least I believe it is, because that's why it has it set there, or at least to my office. I know that Giffords Church to Jaraca is 10 minutes away. My first meeting is anywhere. Now, this is the thing. It's anywhere between 10:15 and 11:30. This agent, because the way the market is, probably should have tightened that time frame up to, maybe 45-minute or an hour showing. It is what it is. Do I have to take that whole time? No. Maybe on the first one, just for argument's sake, we'll say 10:15 to 11. It gives us 45 minutes in the house. Steve, I'll meet you at 743 Giffords Church Road. Then I pick the next one. I know 10 minutes away. So if we do a half hour in the house, maybe even when you're doing multiple showings, you might be in a house for 30 seconds. It might smell like a dead cat, and you might want to walk out immediately. If you have all of your showings 45 minutes apart in time period, you could be sitting in your car for a half hour at a clip. So I always like to stagger them and have them overlap. So we'll do that one, 10:15 to 11:30. So that means that even if I'm at this house until 11, right, I could still get there. Or maybe I'll do it a little bit later, right? This one is 21 minutes away, so let's stagger that one a little bit too. Let's say 11:15 to 12:45. Let's go here and let's stagger this one, and let's say 11:30 to 12. All right, and we're just, again, as you get closer and better at this, you're gonna know, okay, this house is only 6 minutes away. If I leave here at that time, I can get there then. I set all this up. All right. Once I set every bit of this up, this send request button will make it so the requests go out. Prior to me doing that, I go back and I go into, let's do this real quick. Move you all over here. Home. Let's stop screen share. Screen share. All right. I go back into this and I say, Steve, I would love to show you and your wife the homes 11:30 in the morning on Saturday to, or 10:30 on Saturday to 11:30, 11:45 at night. Now, did you enjoy your time with me today, Steve? And these are going to be some important questions that I have to ask you.
Sure, absolutely.
Did you feel like you learned a lot about the experience, and do you feel more confident in buying real estate now using me as your real estate professional?
Of course.
Awesome. In the eyes of New York State, there's what's called agency disclosure, agency agreement. Now, as it says in the top, this is not a contract, but this discusses my fiduciary responsibilities to you as your buyer agent. Remember my first slide, I showed the old beat up car, obedience, loyalty, care, and all that stuff.
Yep.
This disclosure right here talks about my fiduciary responsibilities as you. I have this pre-filled out, which basically says that this form was presented to me by Ryan Clark of Berkshire Hathaway, working as a buyer agent. I would love it, and in the eyes of New York State, I need to have you sign this so that way we can go see the houses so I can represent you as a buyer. Does that make sense?
Sure.
I slide the paper across the desk and I have them sign that. All right. It is so much easier after having a 45-minute conversation with somebody, getting them on the hook and excited to see houses in 2 days. They already set up their tour. They already previewed the house that they like. They already set everything up, and have them sign this disclosure. It is very difficult to go back in time, right? Let's go back in time. Steve, you called me for the first time ever, right? Ring, ring, ring. And you call me and you say, hey, Ryan, I want to buy a house. So it's,
Hey, Ryan, I want to buy a house.
cool. What house?
143 Forest Lake Road.
Perfect. I am doing absolutely nothing because I'm a brand new agent. I'll meet you there in 5 minutes. Sound good?
Sounds good. Let's go.
All right. I'll see you then.
All right.
And now I did none of this. I didn't preset his expectations. He knows me as just somebody who's going to answer the phone call and show him a house on a whim. I don't know any of the pre-qualifying questions. I don't know any of the pre-qualifying answers. I don't know if he's pre-approved. He doesn't know the process. He doesn't know anything. I don't have him having the New York State agency agreement signed. We get to the house. I show him the house. I'm like, oh, Steve, by the way, can you sign this on the hood of my car? I have a pen here somewhere.
I'm not signing anything right now.
But Steve, you have to.
No, I don't have to sign
Yeah, but
anything. You didn't tell me I had to sign this.
But Steve, it's an agreement. We have to. I need to represent you.
No, sorry, I don't like signing stuff I'm not familiar with.
Oh. Okay. Have a good day.
You too. It's too bad. I really like the house too.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I'll see you later.
I'll be ready in
Right.
about a month. I'll be ready in about a month.
Yeah. So anyway, that's the point, right? We want them to come into our professional office. We want to be the professional. We want to educate our clients. We want to educate them throughout the whole entire process, right? And then we can sleep peacefully at night knowing that we have our New York State agency agreement signed, and the big wigs up in New York State won't fine us because they need money because we didn't have this signed. Once that is signed, then we have our affiliate disclosure, which I have them sign as well, and say, hey, this is our affiliate disclosure. This just talks about our affiliation with Homestead Funding and Geico and some of our local entities that we have here, yada, yada, yada. I always make a joke. I say, Warren Buffett pretty much owns the world. It's going to be inevitable that there's going to be an affiliate within this real estate transaction somehow, some way. You just have to sign off on that. And they're like, cool, no problem. And then what I do is I show them the most basic forms, right? I say, okay, this is the carbon monoxide smoke detector form. This is going to be one of the disclosures you're going to have to sign. It basically just says that the house has to have a carbon monoxide and smoke detector on every floor and things like that. Lead-based paint. Every house built before 1978 has or could have traces of lead-based paint. The sellers have to sign a disclosure. 9 out of 10 times, they're not going to have any tests done or anything like that. You just have to be aware that the house was built before 1978 and sign off that there's no records or tests that have been done. property.
I haven't asked Scott, but do we have any of the brochures, your family and lead-based paint?
Yeah,
Here?
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we do. We have them here at the office. We have the printed copy, and then we also have PDFs. It's good rule of thumb, good habit to have them initial the last page of the PDF and just put it in their packet.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You know, that way something can't happen down the line. They can't say, "Oh, I never knew about that." Well, you signed the disclosure and you also initialed the packet. So, but again, it
Thank
goes.
you.
Yep, absolutely. It goes back to that whole professional setting that you set the standard from day one. The first time they call you and you set the standard that you are a real estate professional and you're going to ask them questions over the phone, and you're going to bring them into the office, and you're going to do all these people. When I look back and people talk to me, because I always ask, I'm very constructive of myself. And I always ask people, like, what was your favorite part of the process? Like, what did you enjoy the most? What did you enjoy the least? And they always say that in the beginning, that they enjoyed the initial consultation the best. It was kind of a fun, it removed the stress from them because they're going in so unknown, whether you're 1 day in real estate or 8 years in real estate or 40 years in real estate, you know more than the average consumer, right? You all passed the test, you all went through the course, you're all working within an office, and you have the resources. So people always have said that initial consultation put them at ease so much that it just made the rest of the transaction more smooth, because you could always revert back to that and say, hey, remember our initial consultation? I said that this was going to happen. Well, here it is. This is how we're going to overcome that. Hey, remember at the initial consultation, I said that your inspections were going to be due today. All right, well, let's set them up now. Hey, remember at our initial consultation where I said the closing date was a target due date? I know that we're supposed to close on March 15th. It's now March 17th. Don't worry, we're going to be closing soon. It just completely puts them at ease. So here's the property condition disclosure, which in my opinion is not worth the paper that it's written on. This is the disclosure that the seller is disclosing to potential buyers. All right, it is super important. You have to have it. You can't hide any major material defects, but in no way, shape, or form should this ever take precedent over a home inspection. All right, this will show you some valuable information, the age of the roof, right? If they know, they could always write unknown. It'll show you, it'll ask you questions. Has it ever been a landfill? They can write yes, no, or unknown. If they write unknown or no for everything, that's well within their rights. If they do know that there's a major issue, they have to disclose that. And this does help you later on in life if there is any legal proceedings. But I always tell my buyers, like, it's a cool disclosure to have. It gives you a little bit of peace of mind. There's no issues, but the home inspection is going to trump all of this. They could say that there's never been any water in the basement, but if the home inspection sees that there's 4 or 5 inches of water in the basement with mold growth, well, there's water in the basement. I don't know. At the time you wrote it, there might not have been, but there is now, right? So we're going to do everything based on that home inspection. Has everybody seen this before? The PCD? Yeah. Laura, you seen it? Perfect. Or I'm sure Tom has. I know Joe Sullivan's seen 1 or 2 in his life. All right. So once we do the PCD, then we go over here to the last page of the property condition disclosure. And, I talked to Steve and I say, hey, Steve, you're going to be doing things a lot in real time. I already set up your showings for Saturday at 3:00. I just want to go quickly over the real estate contract with you. I just want to go over some of the pertinent parts. I circled them for you. Right here, items included in the sale. These are some of the most common things. Now, Steve, it doesn't mean that there's going to be wall-to-wall carpeting if there isn't carpeting already in the property. It just means that if it is there, it's going to be included in the sale. Shades and blinds, if it's there at the time, then you're going to get that at the point of sale. Central air. Again, if there's no central air in the house, it doesn't mean that they're putting central air in the house because it's written up there. What we're going to do is we're going to take this information and whatever it currently has, we're going to put down here on these lines. All right. I did have a buyer once tell me when I first started that the contract said that it has central air. Why is there no central air here? I'm like, it doesn't have central air, and we knew that through the whole process. Well, it says right there in the contract, central. But yeah, I always point that out, let them know. Sometimes the most silly of questions will come up, and it'll happen. Purchase price. This is just where I'm going to take all the information from your pre-approval, the information that we discuss. You know, you're pre-approved at 250. We're going to offer 250 in the house. You're putting 10% down. You're going to take a mortgage out of 225 because 10% of 250 is 25,000. Boom, boom, boom. Conventional mortgage. You know, we're going to have you initial everything. You know, and this is the most important stuff in page 1. You know, obviously the seller's name, the purchaser name, the property to be sold, all that stuff. All
Hey,
right.
Ryan,
Yeah.
on that purchasers, with you know, as all the list of what you're paying for on that purchase price, is the seller's concession there too? So
Yep.
say I bought a house for 200,000, I put down 2,000. Would the seller's concession be there in that spot too, or would that only be down below under seller's concession?
Seller concession or earnest
Well,
money deposit?
No, on where the purchase price, if you bought the house for 200, right? And then you put the deposit down of 2,000, would it then show that you owe 198 there?
Yes.
Or would the
So-
seller's concession be there?
So seller concession and earnest money are two different things.
Okay,
So seller concession is when you're financing a portion of your closing costs into the loan, right?
Mhm.
So if you have, let's say you're buying the house for 100,000, but you're going to borrow 5,000 in seller concession to make up for the lack of money that you have liquid. So now you're ultimately going to finance 105, right? Remember we went over that example?
Yep.
If not, I can go over. That's where you would write the $5,000 seller contribution at the bottom. So it'd be purchase price of 105, deposit of 2,000, you know, 103 right there. And then you would put 5,000 there. And then what I always do on line D, because it's blank, I always write the net to seller. I always write 105 less 5,000 seller concession equals 100,000 net to seller.
okay.
And that way everybody knows exactly what we're talking about, because some lenders will say, well, yeah, you're pre-approved for 100,000 or 106,000 rather. But they don't tell the client that it's $6,000 in seller concession. So you're really only pre-approved for 100,000. Right. So we always want to talk apples to apples, right? Whenever you're negotiating, whenever you're talking to a client, you always talk about net to seller. That is what the seller is going to net. And then the seller concession is something as a sidebar. Does that make sense?
It does. I just wanted to, when I was doing the practice one, I just wasn't quite sure what to put there.
Yep. So right here is the purchase price, and then deposit with the contract is right there. And then once, so let's say it's 100,000 here and it's a $2,000 deposit, then you put $98,000 on line C. Line
Okay.
B could be an additional deposit. Let's say you're going to do a $2,000 deposit at the time the contract is written, right? And then you're going to do another $2,500 deposit after inspections. You put that there. All right. So over here, other terms, right? Home is to be broom swept, cleaned, maintenance on the house, seasonal maintenance. So right in the winter time, they have to snowplow the driveway. In summertime or so, they have to ensure the lawn is upkept, things like that. If it is vacant, they should probably turn the water off so the pipes don't freeze, things like that. So home is to be broom swept, cleaned. Broom swept, cleaned is very subjective.
Yeah.
You talk to my Italian mother and you show her my old college dorm room. I think it's clean. My mother does not think it's clean. All right, it's subjective. So just make sure that it's, you know, broom swept. So that way, when you do walk into the house, your clients aren't expecting it to be professionally clean. Like, yeah, they're going to clean the fridge out. Yeah, they're going to wipe down the stove, and yeah, they might clean the oven, and they might sweep, but they're not going to get, you know, Stanley steamer to come in and steam the carpets, unless, of course, you put that into the contract. You know, let's say you go to a house and it's the carpets are destroyed and you want Stanley steamer there prior to closing. You put in there, have Stanley steamer come in or get a credit for it. Again, we already went over all this information with George, but what I circle to the folks is line number 15, right? transfer of title. This is your effective closing date, right? This is the date that we are trying to shoot for. Remember what I said earlier, we're shooting for March 15th. If we close on March 16th, we're fine. If we close on March 14th, we're fine. Now, if it's all of a sudden March 27th, now we have a cause of concern. Now we can have the attorneys get in, intervene and do what's called time is of the essence, but we'll cross that bridge when we get there. Time period of the offer, right? Your offer is good for 24 hours. It means they can't really shop your offer around. Here are all the inspections that we're going to do. So structural inspection, water destroying organisms, septic, if it has it, well test, radon test, anything of 4 picoliters per unit above that is illegal. And then they put a radon mitigation system and or retest, yada, yada, yada. Right up here is all the addendums that are going to come with it, whether it's the carbon monoxide, lead-based paint, any additional addendums that you want to have there. And then right here is where we're going to put the attorneys for the seller and the buyer. And that is my spiel. That is what I do. Buying a home can be a stressful process. Make sure you have the right real estate professional that will guide you through to the finish line. And once we're done with that, I say, thanks, great. I maybe give them a folder to have some of the stuff with it, with my business cards, right? I confirm that we're meeting Saturday at 10:30 for our showings, and then we start the process. I always put families in a group text together. So if it's husband and wife, we're in a group text. There's nothing worse than when the wife texts you at 9 o'clock or something like, hey, can we look at this house? And the husband texts you and says, hey, can we not look at this house? It's awful. And then you're the go-between. And now not only are you a psychologist and a real estate professional, now you're also a mortgage counselor, which my first marriage failed. So I would be the worst person to talk about that. Anyway, different story. I'll edit that recording. Sorry, Aaron. But anyway, that's how I go over the process, right? I am a huge believer of being professional and of bringing people into the office. There's something to be said about doing a presentation like this, which will take about 45 minutes to an hour, have them sign the disclosures, give them a copy of the disclosures, give them a copy of the stat sheet for the houses that they're going to look at, tell them to look on Zillow, tell them to look on Trulia, tell them to look at Realtor, set them up in an automatic search, do all that stuff up front. So your life moving forward is so much easier. I promise you, it's doing the work now. Perfect example is yesterday I decided to paint. I left work at 5 o'clock, drove up to Lake George, decided to paint. I didn't put any paper down because I thought, what the heck? I'm going to put paper down. It's going to take me 20 minutes. Well, when I was done painting, it took me an hour and a half to clean up because I am the worst painter known to man, and I got paint everywhere, right? Take the 20 minutes now to save yourself time later. Does anybody have any questions about working with buyers?
Ryan,
Yes, sir.
what do you usually give your buyers after closing for a
house.
gift? A gift,
A house.
a house.
So what I always do, and I've kind of gotten away from this a little bit just due to COVID and due to things. If so you can get a box of flowers or a box of strawberries or chocolate, right? That is only temporary, right? They can have that for a short period of time until it's gone, until the flowers die. What I like to do is I like to give myself a form of marketing and branding that they could always remember you. So perfect example, my buddy Shariza and his wife Rob bought a house. Every single house that Shariza went into, now Rob's a contractor, she looked at Rob and says, Rob, can we take down this wall? So I nicknamed her the Sledgehammer. So as a housewarming gift, I got her an engraved sledgehammer. They have used that thing so many times that the engraving on it is kind of faded away. But every time she uses it, I get a text message of her with goggles and a hard hat and say, I'm still using your sledgehammer. They just did another renovation of their house, and lo and behold, just referred 2 sellers to me at the same time.
Awesome.
So a constant reminder of who you are and make it personal. I had other clients that were from New England, huge Tom Brady fans. I got them a nice Tom Brady. It was like some, not a jersey, but something like a picture signed, had it all framed. I know that he had his own home office. Every time he goes into his home office, he sees that picture of Tom Brady, which reminds me of him, his real estate agent from New York. So I would say do something like that. Etsy will be your best friend. Get them a discount to or a gift card to. There's a place called Board and Brush where you can do your own farmhouse things. I'm very, very good friends with the owner of that place, so I like to promote his business. But they can do their own board and brush. They can do their things like that. Every time they look at it, what are they going to do? They're going to be reminded of their real estate agent. And that's kind of what I do. Yes, Steve.
Awesome.
I give monogram glasses, glassware, kitchen glasses.
Perfect.
That has worked out. I've gotten 2 referrals off of those so far. So.
And that's exactly what you want to do. You're going to want to do things that are, you can say, oh, here's a gift card to Home Depot. Have fun. Like, maybe do like a $25 gift card to Home Depot and then something else that's means something to them. Get them, if they're wine drinkers.